are these people?
This is one of the rare times that Collin talks about sports because really I don't give a damn about sports. But and this is kind of a local story for me, but it's been the hot topic in DC and will continue to be through the summer. But I wanted to share this story because I think it kind of brings up the larger discussion of how people value property over people. And I think that's a thing that we've talked about on this show a lot and what we talk about in independent media a lot. And this story is no exception. So those of you who are NFL fans, although I'm not sure why at this point, given that they are a mob in of themselves, I've not watched really an NFL game since 2016, 2017 regarding Colin Kaepernick. And I mean, I've watched some games since, but I am not openly like looking to watch any game from the NFL unless I happen to see it in passing. But for those of you who are not familiar, the Washington Commanders, as of now, have been playing in Maryland. And the hope has been for a long time that they'll be able to play in DC. Well, it looks like as of Monday or Tuesday that they have come to an agreement as to building a new stadium within the city limits. So obviously for like a lot of NFL fans, especially for a lot of locals who are looking at it from a service level are very excited about this opportunity. And obviously it was reported on the local news, if not in mainstream media as well, like especially in the sports world. So let's check out this NBC report and we'll get into it a little bit more.
That breaking news is big news for D.C. and the Commanders. Several sources familiar with the plan told News 4 the Commanders and D.C. leaders will announce a deal tomorrow that will bring the team back to Washington, D.C. After sitting vacant for more than a decade, football will be returning to the RFK Stadium site where a new stadium will be built. Thanks for joining us tonight at 11. I'm Sean Yancey. Those same sources told us all the details on this deal are expected to be announced by the Commanders' ownership and Mayor Bowser at a joint news conference Monday morning. Now, News 4 has been following the details of this pending deal from the very beginning. Multiple sources told our Mark Seagraves earlier this month this deal could be worth more than $3 billion. According to documents, the Commanders would put in as much as $2.5 billion, and the district would provide up to $850 million. The framework of this deal would have the team pay the vast majority of the cost to build this new stadium. Much of the money provided by the city would be for infrastructure to support the entire 180-acre development. Again, this is according to documents News 4 saw earlier this month. We don't know if the terms of this deal have changed since then, but we will all find out for sure tomorrow morning at that news conference. The Commanders' lease at Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland runs through 2027, so there are still years to go here until this becomes a reality in Washington, D.C.
So, in layman's terms, Josh Harris, who is the owner, billionaire, by the way, Wall Street hack, by the way, is paying up 3/4 of the cost. So they mentioned it's close to $3 billion. And of the city, we have to contribute the last fourth for infrastructure and maintenance of the stadium once it is built. So for a lot of people, they were like, oh, that's a great deal. And like, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's going to bring more revenue to the city. We're finally, having a stadium back in DC. This is an area of the city that has been needing development for a while. So this can be the anchor essentially to build development in that area of town. So there was a lot of positive, talk about this, especially online. But as we do here, we like to bring some nuance. But we'll get into that later. So let's get into more of the details first surrounding this deal. So I think you will have to play most of this. But yeah, let's get into that more into like the actual logistics of the stadium. I can't hear it.
No? Unfortunate.
No.
Here.
Oh man, Simone, this is a big deal, putting it lightly here. What a historic day for DC and for the Commanders. The Commanders saying today the time is now to bring Washington back to DC. So where we are right now, this RFK site, you can see behind me, it's pretty sleepy. It's an eyesore. It's just been like this for decades now, but the Commanders are ready to change that. You know, back in the day, wow, what a difference. Look at this video the Commanders put out earlier today. This sort of hype video to get everyone excited about the big announcement today. And you can see the stands were rocking at the time. The fans were excited. You're talking about Super Bowl wins back in the day as well. You know, if you're from DC, if you've lived here a while, or if you attended some of the games, you really do understand the team's impact on this city's culture. But as Simone mentioned at the top of the broadcast, it is not a done deal just yet. The honeymoon may be short-lived here because, you know, we have to talk about money at this point. I got a message from my mom earlier, huge Commanders fan. She was watching the announcement. She tells me, you know, okay, it's done. They're coming back home. They said, welcome home. And I said, Mom, you know, okay, pump the brakes just a bit. This still has a long way to go. We know the team is trying to open up here before the first game in 2030. And a lot has to happen between now and then. I want to bring in my colleague, Eric Flack. He was at today's big announcement. And Flack, we know a lot of people are celebrating right now. We have President Trump saying this is a big win. You have the mayor, you have the Commanders leadership also saying this is a big win.
Well,
but now we have to talk
win.
about money. And this is where it gets really serious, right?
You know, this is where the rubber meets the road, Zoe. And as you mentioned, this announcement was a day that for many Commanders fans was almost 3 decades in the making, from the moment that the team left this spot in RFK for a stadium out in Prince George's County, 6 miles down the road that way. But it was this morning at the National Press Club downtown, the Commanders owner Josh Harris, as well as Mayor Muriel Bowser, were joined by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell to announce that landmark agreement for a new stadium on this old RFK site. The estimated $3.8 billion project includes $1.1 billion in taxpayer financing. That includes money for infrastructure, parking garages, a youth sportsplex, all at a time when the district is being asked to limit spending by the federal government. But today, Bowser told reporters the city needs this investment now more than ever.
If you need to add revenue, as we do, you can't leave 180 acres vacant. If you need to add jobs, as we do, you cannot wait for an anchor to show up to start developing there.
Pause.
When you need
Like, this was the argument that I also saw online. It's going to bring new jobs. What kind of jobs? Most of those jobs are going to be service jobs.
Yeah.
Like, because the idea is that they're supposed to build restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So these are going to be essentially gig employees.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like people who are living a living wage. Although I saw one person make that argument and I had to shoot him down. Like, show me the job where you get a living wage as a fucking waitress. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but more importantly, like, think about a stadium. That's, well, football stadium at that. At most, you're going to have what, like 8 home games?
Yeah, plus some concerts in between, probably.
Concerts in between. So it's not even something that's open for the majority of the year. It's only going to be open for the fall. So, but again, these are like gig workers. This is not like people who are making a living wage. And who is going to be working these jobs? It's not going to be like college grad, although there could be some. But fair majority are going to be low income people of color who I would argue may not be able to afford a ticket to see a game. And we're going to get into that in a minute because the idea of season tickets came up and like, so, but I just wanted to mention that because people are like, oh, new jobs, when they're not mentioning that these are going to be like minimum wage, the fair majority of them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
need to attract business, you have to be about business.
It is about DC and making this more than
great FanDuel
and making it
another
attractive.
shitty ass company
with the Washington Monument and Capitol and the Anacostia River, and you know this is going to be one of the most important stadiums in the world, right?
Yeah, also important
AI?
to note that $2.7 billion investment by the Commanders, if the stadium project moves forward, would be the largest private investment in District of Columbia history. The development of the RFK site would not just be a stadium behind me. There would be 5,000 to 6,000 new homes. There would be a youth sports complex. There would be retails, restaurants,
How would there be new homes?
Green space, around 54 acres of green space. So a lot more than just a stadium, Zoe, and that is how it is being sold by the mayor, by the administration, frustration by the Commanders when you're talking about this huge public investment in excess of more than $1 billion over time in taxpayer money.
Yeah, we're talking about DC's Ward 7 Flack, and we know that there's really no in this area, aside from the homes and everything else. There's nothing here attracting folks. So of course the mayor's trying to change that right now, along with Ward 7 council member Wendell Felder. Flack, we know that this is about 180 acres we're sitting on right now, and Josh Harris, the mayor, also said this stadium will only take up a small portion of that land. So tell us, what is it supposed to be like? What's the fan experience supposed to be like here?
Well, reporters today in an early morning session got the term sheet, a lot of the nitty-gritty details about what this stadium will entail. Here's what we know right now. It will have a dome. It will likely be a translucent dome, meaning one of those domes you can kind of see through. The images that the team put out are not necessarily renderings of what the final product will look like, but it did in fact show a translucent clear dome where you would be able to see the sky. The commander said all options are on the table, meaning they're still considering a retractable dome, but everything I'm hearing is that translucent dome that just stays in place is much more likely. You're talking about a 65,000 seat stadium that would come with what's
which
known
is
as
medium
seat
size at
licenses,
best,
or
if not
PSLs.
smaller.
That's where
end.
season ticket holders have to pay a huge
If I got
premium,
that wrong, let
thousands
me
of
know in the
dollars
comments,
just
but
for the rights to
it's
then
not really that
purchase
big,
their season tickets. It's
relatively.
a very expensive idea. It can be a controversial idea. It is also something that comes with almost every new NFL stadium. There's going to be about 8,200 parking spots. That will cut down on tailgating, but the team says tailgating will still be available. Set to open, as you mentioned, in the fall of 2030. And Zoe, the NFL commissioner today, was asked about a Super Bowl. He said, I'm not here to guarantee anything. I'm not here to announce anything, but that new stadium certainly helps the city's chances of getting a Super Bowl dramatically. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that changes things for sure, Flack. And you're talking about a stadium with a dome as well, so you can use this year round. Really quickly, Flack, I want to touch on those parking spaces because, that's a far cry from what we see over at Northwest Stadium right now. Almost double the parking spaces we have, more than double the parking spaces that they're planning here for the RFK site. But the infrastructure here is just different. You have multiple metro stops you can walk from. You have Uber as well at this point. You have the trolley going down H Street. So there are so many ways to get to the stadium compared to Northwest Stadium in Prince George's County.
It's going to be in that urban stadium mold, so there are going to be parking garages instead of parking lots. The city, a lot of the city's investment, like over $300 million of the city's investment over time, is going to go to those parking garages, which the city will ultimately own.
Garages.
There are studies for WMATA Metro to study the egress, the in and out of getting all those fans in and out of the one metro station that is here in this area. Is there any idea to expand that? Those studies are part of this investment as they look forward. There is going to be Uber, rideshare. There's going to be all different.
Apparently. There we go.
Yeah. So that's something I want to mention because me being somewhat of a pseudo nerd for public transportation, like, first of all, they mentioned you could take the streetcar there. First of all, the streetcar is not really that close. You'll have to walk a certain distance in order to get there. But number two, the streetcar goes, 3 miles? So it's shit to begin with. Number
Streetcar
one.
named Desire.
Number two, and I've said this on Twitter, there are free subway lines that share tracks that stop right in this area. Now, given the amount of crowds that are going to be going through there, though that trunk basically in the center of the city is at capacity already. So if you're trying to add
More
a larger crowd
and,
given a game, like that's going to overwhelm the system, especially since there are going to be people coming from all sides of the region, from Maryland and Virginia, in addition to DC, who may not necessarily drive, who will have to take the metro. And
dude, I couldn't
God
imagine.
forbid if there is right.
I've been stuck in
idea
like game day traffic, like at a college game, not even at a professional game, right? Like
So
Florida State plays, you get stuck in that shit, you're screwed. Like
right. So I'll probably go into this a little bit later.
Traffic,
but I would argue, first of all, I just feel like with a lot of the plan, well, first of all, it was just announced, but I just feel like the idea that I get from all of this is that, we'll build the stadium now and we'll figure out the rest as we go, which to me just seems like very piss poor city planning to me. Like, you know you're going to need the metro, and I would argue you would need to probably extend the system in order to, account for the extra crowds. If not, you need to build more extra entrances in order for people to get in and out more efficiently. You should be, and especially since they would ideally want this stadium to be built in time for the fall of 2030. Those plans should be on the board right now, if not construction happening right now, I would argue. Number two, I would also argue that, and again, I'm not an NFL person, but it's like, you have your current lease at your current stadium until 2027. Why wasn't there plans to talk about having a stadium here, I don't know, years ago? Especially since within the last 15 years, there's been a soccer stadium, a baseball stadium that has been built in a similar area, like years ago, that area has been developed. And someone brought this up to me like today. Like, why wasn't the stadium built around that same time? Like, I kind of make it like a sports complex where you have all of those three things. So it just seems more like haphazard to me, and a lot of people riding on nostalgia of the idea of like, oh, we haven't had a football team in DC in forever, and we deserve to have one here. But there's no account for what it's going to mean for the neighborhood where it's going to be affected, no account of the transportation that's going to needs to be modified. And more importantly, especially now, as we talked about in the last segment that I did, we're heading into a fucking recession, more importantly. We're heading into a fucking tariff war right now. Like, you're going to build a new, like, you're going to need, where the more materials coming from, it's probably going to jack up the cost of this stadium exponentially right now if you're looking to build it within the next year. Yeah. So that's going to drive up the cost. Is Harris going to pull up the rest of the money to offset that, or is that going to come from the city? We don't know. So there's just kind of a lot of unknowns that regarding all of this that I just feel it's like, oh, we need to have the stadium, but we'll worry about the rest as we go, which I'm like, shouldn't be doing that, especially given, more importantly, to the residents who this will directly affect, who live in the area, that will have to deal with the construction and all of that, and all the negatives that come along with that, which we'll get into later. Any thoughts on this before I go on? Because, like I said, I'm speaking I'm not like into sports like that, or into like civil engineering like that, but these were the things that I was thinking of in terms of immediate like needs, in terms of,
right.
I don't want to sound like a hater, like I'm not opposed to having a stadium in the city. I just feel like there should have been more long-term planning for this, or should have been more long-term planning for this, especially given that the lease,
those same public funds could be used to fund all sorts of other shit. So we'll see.
And I'll get into that later, but it's like, I'm not hearing anything from the NFL basically saying like what they're going to do to invest in the city that they want to have this stadium in. It's just like, oh, we're just here.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll get more into that later, because like the NFL does some fuck shit regarding cities that they have stadiums in. Yeah. But I think that we can finish this up.
To get to the stadium, aside from those sea of parking lots that we know so well at Northwest Stadium, 22,000 parking spots out there, 8,200 with the new stadium here. That's a different experience out there. Probably the one thing people do love about Northwest Stadium, the tailgating. It'll change down here, but be replaced by a game day experience with bars, restaurants, and some limited tailgating. So.
Okay, Flack, thank you so much. A lot to figure out between now and also the time that the council is supposed to vote on this, which is expected to be this summer. All right.
So we're hearing like a little bit more of the details. So as they said, like, this has to be voted on by the DC Council, which in of itself I have a problem with. because ultimately the decision is going to be decided by 12 people. And I'm kind of like, this should be a ballot initiative in terms of having the DC residents make the decision. And that's not happening. And given the kind of like, they're saying that they have 2 months to make a decision and vote, which I argue is not enough time. So, but right now, like since then, there have been a few council members who have expressed concerns, thank God, regarding the stadium. So let's get to hear what some of our council members have had to say.
The announcement to potentially bring back the Commanders to the district has garnered a lot of attention, many very excited, but not everybody is on board. So Ward 6 council member Charles Allen, who has never supported building a new stadium at the RFK site, says that he doesn't think the mayor will have the votes.
And Council Chairman Phil Mendelson tells News 4 he is unhappy with the mayor for trying to, in his words, jam the council with a deadline for the deal. News 4's Paul Wagner joins us live from outside the Wilson building with the latest. Paul, the mayor needs 7 votes, and there are council members who are saying she doesn't have them.
That's right. I talked to Charles Allen here at the Wilson building. I asked him that question directly. He said, yes, he does not think she has the votes. I asked Phil Mendelson about that. He said he didn't want to speculate. We know that there were 4 council members at the press conference earlier today. So where these other votes might come from is unclear at this point. But I did speak with Phil Mendelson. He had put out a statement, and then when we were here, we caught him as he came out the door and got him on camera. I asked him about his reaction to the deal with the Washington Commanders. Take a listen.
I am shocked that the deal has gone this far. And with some of the terms that I've just learned about, that there was no collaboration or briefing with the council. And I don't want to see a repeat of what we saw in Virginia. The Commanders reached out to me late last week. We didn't discuss any of the terms. And I absolutely want to have an open door with the Commanders. But trying to jam the council with a July 15th deadline when the mayor hasn't even gotten us the budget, let me repeat, the mayor will be 7 weeks late in getting us the budget. And that it will be all consuming for the next 2.5 months.
Mendelson says he supports the Commanders coming back to the district and supports building a stadium at the RFK site, but says spending $1 billion of taxpayer money is highly questionable at a time the district will have to trim hundreds of millions of dollars out of next year's budget. Charles Allen, who represents Ward 6 and has never supported building a new stadium at the RFK site, had this answer to the question, is your vote a hard no?
People have loved asking that question for more than a decade, and I've been very consistent that I don't think an NFL stadium is the right use for this space. That's not the question that's in front of us today. We finally have a proposal that's coming in front of us. And as a policymaker and as a legislator, I have to now decide, is it a good deal? The vision of what I would see for that site is delivering all the things everyone touts: housing, jobs, new businesses, grocery stores, retail, restaurants. But as we've seen across our city, you don't have to have a stadium to anchor that, to make that a reality. And $1.2 billion in public dollars, that is something I'm not comfortable and I don't support.
Although many people News 4 spoke to were enthusiastic about the stadium plan, some in Ward 7, where the new stadium will be built, were not.
Our tax base is diminishing. We're going to have serious problems here with this administration. And the idea that we're chasing a billion-dollar stadium is just obscene.
I'm personally not for it. I think there could have been better uses of government funds for this to better improve the community. We could have brought more affordable housing. And it's going to be lots of stuff's going to get turned into parking lots.
Yep.
Another thing that Charles Allen told me is that when he met with the Commanders, he was told that they would keep their headquarters out in Ashburn. He doesn't like that at all, because he said Ted Leonsis has Monumental here in the city, the Nats have their headquarters here in the city, and he says, why keep your headquarters out there in Ashburn? He said he looks at this as a tax plan on their behalf, and he didn't like that at all. So that's another part of this plan that Charles Allen doesn't like. That's the latest here from the Wilson building. Now back into you.
All right. Our Paul Wagner live for us this afternoon. Paul, thank you.
So yeah, and since this segment, I've had more councilmen kind of say we like the idea, but we essentially need a better deal out of this. So let's get into Twitter,
okay,
and see what some of my friends had to say. It's funny that I know a lot of friends in high places regarding so this tweet was from JP Finlay, who is I guess he is a reporter. I forgot for NBC locally here. And he said, think about this. If Washington gets the NFL draft and Super Bowl, the economic impact of just those two events will probably be about 1.25 billion or more. This will pay back the public investment in two events. Martin Osternoll, who is a reporter here, very prominent in DC, he said, well, not really. For comparison's sake, the economic impact of tourism in DC every year is roughly 10 billion. And what the city takes in terms of tax revenue is 2 billion. Two events will not pay off the city's investment in the stadium, assuming that they get to, well, they don't,
Right.
the Commanders don't
You're not gonna
necessarily
get-
have to have.
No, that's all going to be
Well, they don't
private money.
necessarily.
Like,
Right. And it's right. It's not to say like, well, I'm saying like, the Commanders don't necessarily have to get to the Super Bowl. The city will just in itself have to host it. But
yeah,
you know, but it's still the idea of like, and that's what I was hearing online. It's just like, oh, a Super Bowl and a concert, a couple of concerts will basically, you know, cover the stadium. And basically the idea is like, no, it won't. So, and we'll get more into more specifics of that later. No, we don't need to see you, chat. Close friend of mine, Patricia Stamper, who I worked with in Empower Ed. She's actually a commissioner for the ward that this will be built in. So if anyone should speak into this. But this was, so Dev Myers wrote, World 7 deserves an anchor that will unlock new opportunities and drive real investment in our community. Sports aren't just about entertainment. They're about economic growth and job creation. It's time to bring the Commanders home.
Okay.
So she responded, Ward 7 definitely deserves an anchor, but we definitely need a grocery store. Currently, we only have 2 grocery stores to feed our nearly 90,000 residents. Now, put that in perspective. I live in, so for those of you who don't know DC, Ward 7 essentially is one of the 2, I would argue, low-income wards in the city. For context, I live in a more gentrified area of the city. I live within a 2-mile radius of 7 grocery stores, 4 of which I can walk to. 2 of them are Whole Foods. So the idea that I live near 7 within a 2 of them within a 15-minute walk, and she's saying among herself and her residents that live in Ward 7, there are only 2 in the entire ward for 100,000 residents. I think is you see the problem here.
Yeah.
So that's what she's saying. It's like
I take a lot of these folks lock their doors in Ward 7, you know, when they drive through.
Well,
like,
the thing is, the part of Ward 7 is becoming more gentrified, which
yes,
in of
and which is more of this would be part of that issue, right? Like,
right. Oh yeah, we're going to get to that too.
Okay.
So she continues in response. I didn't pull it, but she said, I never said a grocery store as an anchor, although I think it should be. I'm saying it should be seen as part of the amenities that are being included in this RFK deal. That's all. As a commissioner and mother, it's more important to feed the community than entertain the community. Dev Myers said, as a commissioner, I want the same thing, and I believe this deal is the right deal for you to be entertained and feed your family. And I responded to both of them. No one is going to be entertained if local residents cannot afford tickets for a game or a concert. This deal isn't for us. It's for the elites who have the money to spend, and we are paying money we don't have to make them richer.
Yep.
So that was my take from both of them. And for the record, Patricia, who adores me, agreed with me. So this is, but Stamper retweeted this. Where are the ANC's, the advisory neighborhood commissioners, stakeholders, and community members? Where is the commitment to actually fully functional grocery stores and specialized programming? So this was in response to the press conference that they have regarding this. So basically, it was the mayor and a few council members. So basically, the elites were at this press conference, and no one in the community necessarily was represented who went to the press conference at all. So this also dictates who the stadium is being catered for. So that was the comment that drove that tweet. So we heard the disadvantages, and I saw a lot of discussion in the chat. Now let's get into the real as to why, as I said earlier, the is nothing more than a mafia. And Reef and I were talking about this the other night. If you know anything about the Olympics, especially with the IOC
or FIFA,
they do the same shit too, if not worse. FIFA as well. So let's get into. So this is from a more perfect union. We don't usually use stuff from them. However, I think in this case, they kind of give a more comprehensive view of why sports stadiums, especially ones that are taxpayer funded, are more often than not a fucking scam.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important. And I think and this is why I wanted to bring this up, is just essentially this is a transfer of wealth from people without means to people with means, and how the NFL can basically, essentially, as they said, the argument is the stadium will be here, that the management will not be here, the training fields are not going to be in the city, they're out in Maryland, Virginia. So really at any time they could say, oh, we don't need to be here anymore, give us more money or we'll move.
Right.
And then essentially what you're going to do with the stadium, you're not going to have any games, and you have to try to get concerts or whatever in there, which is not going to necessarily make the revenue that you need in order to make it viable. So those are the kind of games that the NFL plays, and especially given the lobby behind it with our government, they usually get their way. But we'll look into this a little more of other cities who have had this issue regarding their stadiums, of why essentially people are worried about the Commanders coming to DC under such a similar deal. Go ahead.
Every summer, stadiums across America will be packed with fans, but the true game is played far from the field, in state houses and courtrooms throughout the country. The players aren't athletes, but billionaires and lobbyists, and the stakes are hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. In state after state, billionaire owners manipulate our passions for sports, crafting narratives that defy economic logic to reroute public funds from essential services, things like schools, housing, and transportation, into their own deep till. Most of the time, as a fan, it feels pretty helpless.
It's despicable, right? And it's an action and it's a move that should be despised by any and every community member.
In Nevada, John Fisher, the billionaire heir to the Gap fortune and owner of the Oakland A's, plans to move his team to Las Vegas, armed with nearly $400 million from taxpayers. We saw some of the headlines and we set out to investigate. And what we found left us wondering, are these deals actually inevitable? Is it possible for cities that are typically pitted against each other to unite and fight back? Is there hope for fans and public budgets?
You have a real crisis situation in Nevada schools.
That's Chris Daly. He's the political director for the Nevada State Education Association.
For decades, Nevada has grossly underfunded public education. We rank 48th in the country in per pupil funding, despite having some higher cost of living here.
So in 2023, educators set out to start fixing Nevada's public education system.
Public education is an everyone issue.
They held rallies, pressured the government, and got a $2 billion a year increase.
That was great, but you have to keep in mind, with factors like the increasing costs to operate a school district, even with that $2 billion, we didn't really catch up much.
With the legislative session dwindling, educators rallied at the Capitol. Their demand was clear: more funding to reduce class sizes and increase educator salaries. If they didn't get it now, they'd have to wait 2 years for the next budget.
The legislature's response to us was, we're sorry.
The session ended with no additional money allocated.
The very next week, the third week of May, John Fisher and Dave Cavall from the Oakland A's showed up asking for a handout for a new ballpark in Las Vegas.
The legislature called a special session to vote on giving John Fisher.
That's exactly what happened here. I have a school down the street from me who I believe is at a deficit, I want to say, of over $1 million.
Right.
Out of their budget, which has not been addressed. But yet, and I said this on Twitter, I didn't pull it, but yet, somehow, we have close to $1 billion that we have to spend over the course of how many years, I forgot the number right now, towards a brand new stadium that may or may not be financed back into our schools.
Right.
So
almost
that's
90,
kind of
almost 100% won't be, you know?
right.
Like,
right. If anything, it will go towards, it's going to go towards the stadium in itself, but not
and the
necessarily
owners.
within, right, but not
Like-
necessarily within the infrastructure of the city that are essential.
Right.
So that's kind of the issue that we're dealing with right now. And as of right now, we're at a budget deficit because I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, like we got $1 billion cut from our budget. And right now, Congress is not interested in fixing that. So right now, for the next few months, we have to deal with $1 billion less. That will mean, thank God, like at least as far as for me, for my job, because that was something I was worried about. I'm exempt because you can't close schools, but there are going to be other essential services people that will be furloughed. So that's the issue that we're going through now. In addition to, we need to think about our budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And of course, the stadium will be kind of included that cost, assuming if that goes through. So as I said, this is kind of why I wanted to do this story in light of the story that I did earlier, because we're heading into a recession. Like, we may not get the good basic goods that we're going to need in order to live, but we're talking about a stadium like 5 years from now with the hope that it's going to be beneficial for our residents here. Makes no damn sense to me at this point in time. Go ahead.
The owner of the A's, hundreds of millions to move the team from Oakland to Vegas.
There are decades of studies that have all found that there is zero economic benefit to building sports stadiums.
That's Neil DeMause. He co-wrote the book on sports stadium controversies.
All of the evidence shows the same thing, which is that the worst possible thing to spend public money on is a sports stadium.
Yes, you heard that right. The University of Chicago recently asked 43 economists if stadium subsidies were a good deal for taxpayers. Only one said they were.
It didn't surprise us after the fact when the A's made $100,000 in contributions to the legislators, most of whom voted for the package. They hired up about a quarter
makes the most sense.
of Nevada's kind of lobbying corps. The legislature opened up the checkbook, in the end passing a package worth $380 million in public funds.
Over 500 miles away, something interesting was happening. Oakland A's fans were fed up with John Fisher.
Nobody should go into business with John Fisher.
That's Brian Johansson. He's the co-owner of The Last Dive Bar. It's an Oakland A's fan group that sells t-shirts for charity and helps start the fan movement against Fisher.
I think his parents and family probably want to disown the guy with how bad he is in business.
Fisher earned his billions the most American way possible.
Oh, he got that from Mommy Doris. He inherited his fortune, right, from the Gap.
The fortune was built, let's be honest, largely on sweatshop labor.
In 2005, he used part of his fortune to buy the Oakland A's.
This is a team that's been rooted in a community for over 55 years. Championship after championships, iconic dynasties in the 70s and the Bash Brothers and Ricky of the 80s. I mean, it's people's entire lives. It's tattooed right here on my arm, it's never going away.
And they promptly became one of the worst organizations in sports.
This guy just bumbled and fumbled his way through it to where it's just become the laughingstock of the league.
And it's all because Fisher refuses to spend his money on players, on repairs. During the height of the pandemic, Fisher was the only owner who tried to stop paying minor league players.
Like, this guy has had every excuse in the world why he couldn't, stop poop from flooding into the dugouts.
So fans stopped going to games. The team is currently dead last in attendance by a wide margin. Fisher said he was losing money, and he more or less placed all the blame on not having a new stadium.
I'm doing this because I want to win. It's very difficult to be consistently great in this game if you don't have a new stadium to drive the revenues to make it all work.
This is the Bay Area. It's one of the richest areas. You're on revenue sharing. You have a $67 million TV deal. How are you losing $40 million? That's just preposterous.
Professional sports in North America are like almost the definition of cartel, right? You've got a very limited group of very rich people who have an asset that they're not going to let anybody else get, and they use that for leverage at every opportunity.
The teams and our fandom
Welcome to
is
capitalism.
They're scarce. So when owners want to, they can extort communities to pay them hundreds of millions of dollars to keep their teams in town.
It's all, fairly embarrassing for MLB what's
It
going on.
becomes like extortionate.
Other owners aren't going to complain because they may want to use this threat someday themselves.
According to Neil, there's actually a playbook owners follow.
We're going to threaten to leave if we don't get a new stadium.
The president traveled to Nevada today again to check out what Las Vegas has to offer the team.
There are huge economic benefits from getting a new stadium.
From jobs at the Coliseum to Little League team uniforms, the impact of the team has been deeply rooted in Oakland.
And they sort of cycle through these. One doesn't work, you just go to the next one.
Will the Oakland A's stay? Will they go? Will they stay? Will they go?
Faced with the inevitable, the A's fans' position became... This part of the story doesn't have a happy ending for Oakland fans. John Fisher will probably not sell the team. The team will probably leave. But there is some hope for Nevada public schools, and for a future in which states and fandoms can actually fight back.
So Schools Over Stadiums is a committee that the Nevada State Education Association set up to fight the use of public funding in the proposed new ballpark for the athletics.
So Schools Over Stadiums, they're all about taking that public money away and kicking John Fisher in the nuts, and so we're all about kicking him, in the nuts as well.
The teachers union is fighting Fisher's handout on two fronts. They claim the whole thing is unconstitutional and are suing to stop it from happening. They also want it to go to a public vote. Let the people decide.
When you ask the public, do you want to put public money into sports stadiums? The answer is almost always no.
It just happened in Kansas City. The Hunt family, one of the richest families in America, wanted Missouri to spend $500 million building them a new stadium. They're now threatening to move the team to Kansas after Missouri voters said no. Recent polling in Vegas had the same result.
52% of the voters said they opposed it, while 32% said they support it.
The hard part is getting on the ballot. Shortly after filing for the referendum, attorneys from John Fisher sued to stop that from happening.
The dude is literally suing teachers that are just fighting to get public money for schools. You're a billionaire. You don't need their $380 million.
We are fighting John Fisher's lawyers in Nevada courtrooms on two fronts, and so those legal bills do run up.
In May, the Nevada Supreme Court ruled in favor of Fisher. The vote won't be on the 2024 ballot, so the group is targeting 2026. Schools Over Stadiums estimates it will cost at least $1 million to gather enough signatures to get that referendum on the ballot. This is where Oakland fans have come in.
We've raised a couple $100,000. Oakland fans have been exceptionally generous. Most of our financial support and backing has come from Oakland fans.
We've always sold, wristbands and stuff like that.
The last dive bar sold I Stand of Oakland wristbands, donating 100% of the proceeds to Schools Over Stadiums in Nevada. Another donor matched whatever they raised. Meanwhile, Oakland protests and activism started getting national media attention.
27,000 plus fans came out to yell again and again, inning after inning, sell the team, and it was just a beautifully organic thing.
What does it say about sports in America to you?
That everything I came to know and grow up to love about it was all a lie. It was just some cheap marketing ploy to just get money out of me.
They've built something that I don't think we've seen in this country in decades. And that's genuinely a people-powered movement while not overtly political. It's necessarily anti-corporate, right? Anti-billionaire.
Billionaires should be paying for their own stadiums, right? If we can help prevent other fan bases from losing their team, other communities from being exploited by these billionaires, and you have politicians working in unison with fans saying, no, we are not paying for your stadium, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's really ultimately my complaint. Like, if Josh Harris, who's the owner of the Commanders, was willing to put in free force, why not pay all of it?
Right.
Why do we have to go in our coffers in order to pay for the stadium that you want because you're trying to be nostalgic? Now, he's a DC native, so he's like, oh, I want to have like that experience. And I think the sad thing is, for a lot of service people who like football or into sports or whatever, like, it's playing into that nostalgia, or it's the idea like we're a major city, or we call ourselves a world-class city, so therefore we need to have a football team in the city, that kind of thing. Like, I want the ability to go to games, and I don't want to necessarily go all the way to Maryland, and drive like an hour or so just to watch a football game. But again, it's still the idea of like, these are still billionaires who are using their money that ultimately they're going to get that money back at no revenue or even incentive for the city in the service that we need anyway. Like, and again, I'm not trying to be a hater. Like, I'm not necessarily opposed to having a stadium, but again, I think it's the idea, two things. Like, one, transparency. Like, the idea, again, as I said, there's just our council members who are voting for this over the people, like, I think is bogus to me, because ultimately it's the people, especially the people who in the ward that this will affect, should make the decision, number one. Number two, it's still the idea of like, if you wanted to have the stadium, there should have been some long-term planning in terms of talking about it, figuring out infrastructure, like there's just so many unknowns that now they have to spend 2 months to figure out a piece that may not be figured out if they do decide to build it, that they will not come to find out probably within the next decade. But then another thing that in doing the research in this, the average length of a football stadium is 20 years, which I'm kind of like, why the hell for that short a time, you have it, and that's kind of what you heard in the clip. It's like, oh, we need a new stadium because, like, if the team's not winning, oh, we need a new stadium, and that's a way to pull more money, for claims of, oh, they're not winning because our stadium is not up to date or whatever. And it's like, they're just running around catching a ball. Like, what more do you need to add? Or what do you need to prove in order, like that? Again, it's just that kind of talking point that really pissed me off. Like, so to me, it doesn't seem like a good investment. And this is my boss, Scott. And he pulled up, like, so obviously, if the Commanders are moving into DC, this means now Maryland is out because that's where the stadium is currently.
Right.
So Wes Moore, who's the governor of Maryland, had this to say, but I'll read that. Governor Wes Moore basically cuts an ad for the anti-stadium at RFK campaign, with this response showing why stadiums are such bad investments, and it's better to do multi-site use sites used more than a few times a year. Also arguing that people want you to listen and build with them. So let's see what Wes had to say regarding the idea of the Commanders leaving Maryland and basically leaving them with what will be empty seats in what we kind of have right now in DC.
Really have a broad conversation and a broad plan about making that area better than what it is right now, because right now what it is, it's unsatisfactory. It's 200 acres that's used 8 times a year for a couple of hours, and so while the Washington Commanders are returning to its original home in RFK, one thing that we know is we're not going to be left with what RFK is right now. We are going to turn that area into an area where there's going to be real opportunities for the people in the neighborhoods, for people to be able to live and stay and play and have an attraction that's better than what it is right now.
Okay. So it's like a multiple choice question then. It's like all of the above it could be, essentially, is what you're saying.
Well, it's
right
now. Yeah, because really what it is, it's a planning process that's going to exist with the people in Landover. That's one thing that we always said. We're not going to dictate to anyone what that area is going to look like. We're actually going to work in coordination and in partnership with the people in the neighborhood. That's what they asked for, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver.
Right.
Okay.
It's funny that he's saying this after the fact, after the Commanders are leaving them with an old and decrepit stadium themselves now, and now they have to kind of decide what they're going to do with the land that will be vacant. So at least he's saying, I want to work with the community to figure out how to use it. But that's kind of the challenge that I think, people should be making now. And to that point, this is why I tweeted, I believe, earlier today. I'm still fascinated that there are people who support the Commanders returning to DC are making the justification that the stadium would be the anchor, quote unquote, to spur development. The people, the residents, should be the anchor, not the properties. So all of that to say is that you have people living in a place, they're the anchor. They need to have schools. They need to have groceries. They need to have parks. They need to have transportation. Like the things that we need in order to function in where you live, the people are the anchor, not the damn stadiums, not like the property, like in order as kind of a luxury item. That's what it is. It's a luxury item in order to spur development. And that, I think, kind of speaks to the low-key racism and capitalism that does exist, in terms of urban development in this country. It's the idea of like, oh, we need to have these things in order to drive development, and then there's vacation and property taxes going up, and then like people who have been living in an area forever will be forced to move because they can't afford it, or the gentrifiers kind of push them out of the very communities that they live in. So so that's overall my concern. But again, I want to bring up this story because this is a larger conversation in terms of the transfer of wealth in this country and how that relates to sports, and how what we kind of see as kind of like the NFL is, oh, it's just a fun time. We go to a game, we cheer for a team, for our home team especially, we root for them. But low key, it's just, again, they're a mob, because it's a few, and I think of Robert Kraft in particular, and we've talked about him, regarding Israel. It's just a few of them, taking money from us, and they don't need the money, but it's just essentially paying for a project in order for their team to win a couple of games every month.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're not making any investment in the communities that they want to allegedly stay in. Which we're not even hearing from Josh Harris right now.
Yeah.
And that's the argument, fortunately, that our councilmen are making. Is like, well, if you're going to come here, what are you going to do to invest back in the city? So yeah.
Speaking of investment, nope. I'm with you. I mean, same thing with the UFC, When we've talked about Miriam Adelson, she owned a few teams too. I mean, it's just standard, like, extortionist practices at this point. So,
And again, given the harder times that we're heading in right now, I just feel like it's very frivolous right now to make this kind of investment. Whereas as I said, if this were years ago, especially when certain areas of the city were being developed, that we have a fairly new soccer stadium and a baseball stadium, that would have made more sense. Put them all together, or build them like in tandem with another, and then to me that would make you'll get more bang for your buck that way, in my opinion. But this just seems to be haphazard because the Commanders are losing their lease, so they need to go somewhere else. So they're basically using, like, again, the nostalgia card of, oh, we want to come back, so we're going to give you this much money, and like it's going to offer you the development that you want and all that kind of stuff, especially in that area of the city, but not thinking about the impact that's going to have on the residents there. As Stanford said, they don't have a fucking grocery store, or not enough of them for the people that do live there now. So I just think that's kind of fucked up, that you're going to consider a stadium over fucking essential services that residents need in order to live every single day, versus football players that only come in like a few times a year to play.
Yeah, what he said. Oh, anything else?
Talking about, that's why we're demonetized, because we get the real deal of talking about stuff like this that people may make angry. Sorry, but again, I'm not a sports fan. But I'm sure a lot of you are. Or if you just want to give an FU to the NFL in general, and you want to give us the money instead, you could scan the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen, or the link that you see there at the Ko-fi link. And if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, and the link will pop up, and you're able to give that way. Obviously, we know that a lot of people are hitting on hard times right now. So if you're able to give, great. If you can't, also fine. We don't do this for the money. We do this out of the love and just wanting to spread truth to power here. So if you want to support us in terms of helping us grow the network, the best and free way is to like and subscribe, since we are so suppressing the algorithm. And make sure you leave a comment, especially those of you who live in big cities where you do have a football stadium. Do you believe, has the teams that are representing your city really, like, has the stadiums in your cities, in your mind, been a good investment? Have you noticed any, gentrification in those areas and how that might affect essential services, that you might have in your city that are underfunded? And what do you think about this story in general? Were you surprised in terms of what we're finding about the NFL and the sketchy practices? And a lot of them are lobbied in, by the way, just to make that sure. Because Biden signed off on the potential of the Commanders coming back to DC. So keep that in mind, as well. So there's a lobby behind all of it. So, so I would argue it's going to be tough for council members, especially right now, given, we're lost funding and they want to be, I've said this before, kind of careful with Trump. Nothing that could make Trump say, these people are idiots for not having a stadium. And, some of our council members, I hope not, but, we'll see. Help us get to free K. We're actually close to 25. So I think we're less than 100 away. So help us get to that goal.
Yeah.
And thanks for watching.